Welcome to Dig It, a real estate podcast by Hubble Realty Company. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. We're so happy to have you on this episode of Dig It, a real estate podcast by Hubble Realty Company. We are joined by two rural forces today, if I should say so myself. The director of IEDA, Iowa Economic Development, and IFA, Iowa Finance Authority, Debi Durham, also alongside Matt Daniels, Director of Operations for Origin Homes. Thank you two for coming on the podcast today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's finally warmer out, almost.
Is it?
Well, by the time this airs, it will be. Well, can you guys give us a little bit brief background into what you do, but also maybe how you got into your roles today?
Well, I actually started for me back in 2011 when Governor Branstad said, I'd like you to lead economic development. It was going to be a 4-year gig. I'm going on my 15th year.
Congratulations.
And then back in 2019, I was ready to resign, and Governor Reynolds had other plans and asked if I would also take over Iowa Finance Authority. And honestly, it's always been for me, I always thought it made so much sense for IEDA and IFA to be together. So if you really think about it, everything that touches economic or community development is now in one place. So it's a really one-stop shop.
I love that. Matt,
I love it.
A little background on Origin for those listeners who may or may not know about you.
Sure. Yeah. Matt Daniels, Director of Operations for Origin Homes. We are the rural build on your lot, all things rural, I like to say, for Hubble Realty Company. We were started 3.5 years ago, and we are currently in 15 counties across the state of Iowa.
Yeehaw.
And we're doing anything from the affordable workforce housing line. I like to call them housing injections. We go into smaller communities and try to put up 3 to 5 homes at a time, as well as a focus on our build on your lot custom. So that's if you or somebody you own land, you own a lot. And it can be a lot in town. It doesn't have to be fully, out in the sticks or, off the gravel or off the beaten path. But we essentially bring our operation, bring the house and turnkey the house. So anything from infrastructure, septics, all the utilities, and you get to design and pick everything for your custom house. So.
Let me say, though, I do follow him a lot on the speaking tours out in rural Iowa. He is Mr. Popularity. Because they really don't want to hear from me anymore. They want to hear from Matt because they all want housing, and Matt is like the answer to their housing problems. He truly is Mr. Popularity out there.
He comes back and he said, I got to follow Debi today. I got to be Debi's
I feel the same way. I get to follow Matt.
So it's a fun little duo going on.
It's a really good thing that we have going, and it's exciting to be able to bring that to some of the smaller communities that really haven't had the chance to do it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about today. So I know that we could, spend all day talking about economic development and just the rural aspect of our state and how we can bolster that and keep it growing. So I'll try and keep us on track as much as possible.
Okay.
But you two,
that may be hard.
Good luck, Claire.
I've got my challenge ahead of me today. I saw it recently. You were highlighted over at the Marshalltown had their economic outlook breakfast
yesterday morning, bright and early.
And you talked on housing. So if we could start in housing, how have you, particularly you and IFA and IEDA, been champion for housing initiatives? So how does the work you do today and the passion for rural Iowa kind of come together in your role?
Well, actually, housing is actually critical for economic development because it has been, if you had to pick one thing that has been an impediment to our growth, particularly growth in rural Iowa, it's because housing. We have very low housing inventory, very old housing stock. And it is not unheard of for, there truly is a manufacturer almost behind every cornfield. I mean, that is, there is truth to that. And these very successful manufacturers, it is not unheard of to have 50% of their workforce driving in because there's no housing in that community.
Wow, that's a lot. I don't know if everyone realizes that.
It's staggering. Now, you're not going to always even if you had the inventory, you wouldn't capture all of it because people are there because the spouse is working or they like the schools or there's some legacy play for the community. But even if you could capture half of that, think of the difference. Think of the savings that would be for their family, that they would have more time at home with talk about work-life balance. So really housing to us is a critical component for workforce development and growing Iowa's population, which is the other challenge that we have.
Yeah, so Matt, can you talk a little bit about how Origin's playing a role in some of this? And again, you're only maybe a couple years into this rural housing initiative or housing injection, and trying to figure out how best to look at a community, evaluate its needs based on some of these housing assessments and population declines or mild inclines, and what they need. The
laundry list sometimes feels daunting. I think when we because we have a checklist that we put together for our communities, and we send out kind of our first 8 questions and really just get a feel for the community to see, are they prepared? Are they ready? Have they done any kind of rural housing readiness, comprehensive plan? And what is the overall population growth? What are we looking at? What are the businesses? What's the economic outlook in that community? And in our first year that we did we applied for workforce housing tax credits, we were granted, by the way, thank you and your team, Debbie.
Very welcome.
For 3 communities, Knoxville, Manning, and Gowrie. And we decided to do 5 homes in each community, so 15 homes. All of those homes have been completed. We sold 8 of the 15, so we still have a little work to do to get those sold. And then we decided to do it again. So we applied for 3 in Jefferson. And we're trying something new there, a new tactic, which is infill lots. So these were properties that the city owned, tore down the houses, and then we were able to package the deal to do all 3. And then Conrad has a new development over there, the Catherine Farmer addition. And it's been in place for probably 4, 5, 6 years, and not a lot of action over there. I mean, there's 4 or 5 houses built in this new development, but there's 40 lots.
Right.
So we looked at that and said, okay, we've got an opportunity with new streets, new infrastructure, growing community, great school district, all the things Debbie's talking about.
There's some really cute Main Street businesses too. They just had a coffee shop open, a flower shop open. I saw
and they
that.
have the only, I'm going to butcher this, but it's I think it's the only golf course in Iowa that has what they call like midnight golf or something.
I think that is right. Yeah.
They have up lighting, so you can. I mean, I wouldn't do very well there because
I'm bad in the daytime.
You got to stay on the fairway, or else you're losing your ball. So I'm out.
I'm out.
But and then our other community, and we decided to go back to Knoxville. So we had some success down there. They did a really good job working with a whole bunch of people, getting that veterans district really turned around. And we saw another opportunity to go back, and we had some early success, so we wanted to do 5 more. But we're looking at all sorts of things that we've sent out. I think our first round this year, we were talking with 16 communities.
Wow. See, I told you your dance card is full.
Across the state.
Yeah.
And we've kind of worked our way through, that first round, got it down to 12. And these are all internal. When I say the first round, these are things that we're working through. And I think we've narrowed it down. We met the other day. I think we're down to 6 or 7 that we're kind of
for phase 3.
For phase 3,
or round 3, if you will.
We'll try to make our decision here mid-March on the 3 or 4 communities that we select for that June application. So it's a heavy lift at times, but it's also very rewarding for myself, for our team, for Hubble, for the community. There's just so many people involved that. Getting it from point A to point B, that it's fun to, you step back and go, yeah, we did this.
Yeah.
We said we were going to do it. The communities are looking for someone to do it. And we figured out kind of a roadmap to make it work. So a lot of ingredients. I could talk all day, that, Claire, but every community's a little different.
But it does take a partnership, though.
It does.
I mean, there does need to be city involvement. I mean, we're even encouraging more and more employers to step up. We've seen them step up with childcare. Now we're seeing them step up with housing because they know how important that is. And, of course, it takes some investment from the state. So it really is a true partnership that makes these things happen.
A lot of creativity, too. And that's something that we really want to encourage the communities that, yes, we have kind of a checklist and a roadmap, but we're open to ideas and we're open to... we always say, think differently so we can create differently. And what does that look like? And for some communities, it might be, hey, we'll give you a credit on sidewalk concrete or something like that. Or another community might be a free lot or an incentivized lot. Other communities waive permitting fees and, utility connection fees. So there's a whole laundry list of things
it seems like there's no one size fits all, because it really just depends on community makeup and what your needs are. Even going back to some of the homes you're proposing sound, just tailored to that community, which is nice.
Yeah, you're talking an alley load product in Knoxville. You're talking maybe a bigger garage footprint in Gowrie was a request from them, wider footprint in Conrad. So there's different things, different needs for each community. And I feel like the fact that we are truly, this custom builder that can,
That's unique.
that can create this model per community based on needs.
Yeah. In more of an attainable footprint, an
Right.
attainable price point, which is key. You both alluded to kind of that public-private partnerships and the creativity that it takes from the cities, from the state, from everyone. Can you guys talk a little bit more about that and just kind of your experience, maybe as people are attempting to figure out how to keep their community growing, right?
Well, so I spend 2 to 3 days every week in communities of all sizes, which is why we run into each other so often out there. And it's the primary reason I do that is one, you learn a lot when you're actually in communities. And let me tell you, people do not hesitate to tell you what works and what doesn't work. And so it's a great way for us to actually change our programs. And, you talk about creativity and, we actually at IFA and IEDA have innovation as part of our mission statement. And people think that's odd for a government entity. And I'd say you want government to be, you think of the size and the enterprise of government, you want us to be innovative.
Yes.
And so one of the things we learned when we were out is I'm really big on communities need strategic plans, right? We can't tell them, how to do things because it is unique for every single community. And so we really encourage that. But the Thriving Community Program was actually created from those visits. Our team got together and said, how do we turn the tables a little bit? Because in our programs at IFA, workforce tax credits, historic, it doesn't matter, you name it, they're hyper competitive.
Yes.
And sometimes the competition comes down to between 1 and 2 points is how hyper competitive
I'm
they
sure.
are. And so we said, what if we turn this around? What if we gave points to communities that therefore it really does encourage developers? They have to go to the community because first of all, you need to be there to see
Yes.
what it is that you're selling or, what you're investing in. And so that really turned the table and we got more and more developers out. And that really, I think from the community point of view began, and even to compete for thriving, we want to know that if you get these developers here, how are you going to welcome them? Because again, what are you going to do to help entice this or to bend that cost curve and still keep this at that workforce housing level, which is really that missing middle that we need so desperately. And so that has been a very, very successful program.
The Thriving Community thing is awesome. Quite frankly, we monitor and watch that pretty close, and it's fun to see different communities that applied and kind of gauge the pulse on that town and that community and sometimes the entire county. But that's kind of a good roadmap almost, if you will,
it is
for
because
someone like us.
Yeah, because we're going to be looking at it. This community is truly development ready.
Right.
So it kind of, to even get that award or to be recognized like that, it does send a signal out to Matt and others that yes, we believe that there's stuff going on here. They have an economic base that we believe that can support it. They're willing to do the planning and they're willing to do the partnerships.
Well, and to see that kind of cohesiveness from whether it's a seed, a city, all of the development committees and other, just the groups that are within the rural community all coming together to put together that application takes a lot of work. And like you said, it is competitive. Matt likes to call them origin ready.
Origin ready.
He's termed his own. He's termed his own.
Is your town Origin Homes ready?
I love that.
But again, I do think that you look and you weight that pretty heavily. And it has been very interesting if you look at the Thriving Communities list and the list where you have gone from Origin Homes, they do coincide pretty easily. And a lot of people where you haven't gone, say like an Oskaloosa or I'm trying to think, there was another one on there the other day that I saw. But you're in talks with these communities who have already either had a designated thriving,
right, or they're in the process of it, or maybe a boost program or something that they're working through.
Yep.
And there's a lot of if developers and builders take the time, they're going to see the commitment is there. They just have to, like you said, they have to go there and they have to meet and talk.
They do.
And there are
look beyond the radius that they're willing to build a little bit.
Yeah, the economic development committees throughout. There's in the city, then there's in the county, and then a lot of these, there's even like 7 or 8 counties involved in some of these economic development groups.
Oh yeah.
And some of them we've spoke at, but really there's there's more opportunity than people think. It's just, are you willing to go and put in the time? And we are. We've decided that this is our business line. This is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And it's good for the communities to kind of know who we are. I think our first year we were advertising and marketing going, hey, we want to come to your town and build homes.
And they said, who are you?
And they were like, what?
Who are you exactly?
What? You want to do what? And now it's like, to your point, we've talked to over 40 communities.
Well over 40.
Over 40, and the conversations and the emails and texts are always flying, and I like to put the plug in that people need to be patient and persistent.
You do say that
because although Hubble is a pretty large machine that runs, our team is small and it's very focused, very targeted.
Remind people, how many people do you have on your team?
Well, we've grown to 5 now.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, we were
Mighty.
we were 3 for a while there, for a couple of years. And now we've grown to 5. Yeah. So as we're expanding, obviously that requires more hands-on effort in the field and more office support. So
we always like to say at IEDA and IFA, we're never about the transaction. It's all about the relationship, and that is that is so true in rural Iowa. It really is about.
You're not going to get far without it.
It is about the relationship. It is spending time there. It is listening to them. It's but once you develop that relationship, it is it's a bond that doesn't break.
We've been invited to some parades. Like there was a Thanksgiving Day parade.
Were you
in
the
Manning.
marshal?
We didn't enter. We were invited, and I'm like, this would be awesome. Like we should try. There was an adult prom one time. They were inviting us to.
See, that's what I mean.
Golf outings.
I know. You become part of the family.
And so we would love to go to all that stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
Sometimes it's a little hard with our bandwidth.
That's true. It's true. Well, and can you remind me? And I truly don't know. What makes you so fond of rural Iowa from your background, maybe even beyond IEDA and IFA?
Because I don't believe that Iowa succeeds unless all of Iowa succeeds. And there's just a certain amount of momentum that just is happening in the urban centers.
I feel like
there, and not to say we still shouldn't participate and do projects here, but it's different.
Yeah.
In rural Iowa, and there's no greater program than workforce housing, I think has really made a significant difference. But the other program that has really, truly been transformational is our Catalyst program in our downtowns, because you talked about the public squares and you talked about the new coffee shop coming in. Well, chances are we are involved in that too.
Yes.
With our Catalyst grants, we'll take the worst building on the block that's abandoned, that's boarded up. The city will work to get, a new owner in there because the previous owner has done nothing with it. We give them this Catalyst grant, and then they get, upper story housing. The next thing you know, they've got steady rent coming in from above, and then they've got this viable business on the bottom. And once you do one, they come back year after year after year.
I love that.
It is so gratifying to go to, and this is communities of the smallest sizes, right? I mean, we're talking communities, some of them 500 and 600 people. But so, it's just, you can see your efforts, and you can see just truly what that one, and believing in them, right? I mean, you believe in them. And then again, we keep getting called back, and we love that. We love repeat projects, just like we do with Origin. So.
Yeah. Well, and I know that you guys, I know it's a competitive process. So I know it's not just like, hey, we're going to put in for this and we know we're going to get it. It's like, bring your best every time and make sure you pick the right community, because it needs to be viable. It needs to be actionable and good for everyone.
Yep.
Speaking of, I'm from a town of 350. So
where's that?
Menlo.
Oh,
shout out Menlo, Iowa.
Yes.
Hello,
Town
Menlo.
of few, friend of all.
Yes.
Look at that slogan. But I know I've seen it in work. Now we live outside of Stewart, and I've seen it work on their main street with just exactly what you were saying with, a business on bottom. Doa Deer is a fantastic little place in our community.
Fabulous.
Have you been?
My gosh.
Isn't it cute?
It's great.
Reagan, the owner, is just phenomenal.
She is phenomenal.
But they did the same thing. Airbnb. Stuff up top,
Yeah.
business on the bottom,
Yeah.
and it's a great, and I think it's really spurred Stewart's local little Main Street, which is really nice to
Williamsburg is
see.
another one that's done that. I mean, they started out with it was the coffee shop there, 2 women, I love that. That they did the Airbnb, up above, and then the coffee shop, and now I don't know how many buildings have been done on that square. We love it. And again, you think about these things are coming back on the tax rolls, right? So it's good for rural Iowa, and it helps with tourism as well for us because people like to get out and visit these small communities. I'm all about shopping small.
Well, you brought up employers earlier, and it kind of skips ahead in my questions that I had for you, at least. And Matt, interject whenever you want, because I'm just excited. Debbie's here. I know where to find you any good old day of the week.
Old news for you.
No. But can we focus on employers a little bit and the role that they play in boosting their economic impact, their workforce, and their towns?
It's huge. I mean, anytime we can kind of combine that effort with all the other things that we were talking about, I think I would love to see a little bit more pressure put on the employers, if I'm being perfectly honest.
That's perfectly fine, to be honest.
Because I look at a place like Knoxville, and I saw what Weiler did with their sign-on bonuses and their retention. After a year, I think it's after a year or two, they get another bonus. And you look at something like that a little goes a long way. And really, if these employers can look at that and say, okay, we've met the builder, we've obviously talked with Debbie and her team, we know we need to do this. What could we do? What are some ideas
going back
for retention?
To that creativity a little bit.
Yeah, and a little bit more than just a gift card to Casey's. I mean, that's great, but let's put a little bit more skin in the game. What can we do to offer some more incentives to get people here? There's just so many moving parts with, we've got better internet now in rural Iowa. We're able to have more people working remotely. They need housing. And if we want to retain our people and grow our communities, I think the employers it's going to come a point where they're going to need to step up a little bit more and a little bit more. Musco's doing some great things down in Oskaloosa. I'm missing a bunch, obviously, but I think there's some opportunities there that we could start including that in some of our checklists, and just really putting maybe a little bit more soft pressure on the employers, because I think ultimately that's who it's really going to benefit is the community and the employers. I mean, we would love to go back and do more. If we do our 5 in Manning, we want to go back and do 5 more, just like we did in Knoxville, and kind of rinse and repeat. And as we grow, then we can kind of help the communities grow. So, without totally calling out all the employers, I just think there's some creative ways that
everyone has their own budgets and their own ideas and their own initiatives. So again, like communities and being creative on the housing and what works for them, employers, what works for you.
What works for you guys.
Is that fair?
I would say that. And of course, you just named 2 between Musco and Weiler. I mean, great companies, right?
Yeah.
I think housing is new for them, because if you look at their record, they've been involved in healthcare, they've been involved in childcare, they've certainly been involved in
critical elements,
restoration of downtowns, or they give a lot to their community. The housing piece is a bit different. We've seen them now. That in that case, JBS for one is a company that has stepped in and done some multifamily housing for their people. But I think that it's just that it's telling them how can they participate, and it really is probably working more in close partnership with the city. Maybe it really is opening up some land, helping the city, because the cities, I will tell you, the struggle for them right now is getting infrastructure to new sites. But if land was maybe donated, so I think there's a lot of ways that companies can participate in this. Because I will tell, and part of it, I think it's just education on our part, because 21, based on our data, we believe we need 21,000 more housing units by the year 2030. This is including, because right now we have about 16,000 units under construction. And this is projects that we touch from some kind of subsidy. So it could be the affordable tax credit on the IFA, to the workforce housing, to historic, which we believe from our records is record breaking. Right? So that's pretty remarkable. But out of this 21,000, 70% of that needs to be single family homes.
Wow.
So that's different, right? We built a lot of multifamily, and that's certainly needed in the inventory. And there's some places we still need that mix.
And you get that request a lot as
We
well.
do.
We do,
And
yeah.
I believe they need to be owner occupied because that's how you begin to create personal wealth. But it's also where you really begin to build roots in a community, right? Stabilization. And so I think that just getting that information out to employers, that there are some things that they can do, but it's just housing is kind of new for them. I will say.
Yeah, there's a coaching element
There
for
is.
sure
There is.
to really kind of help mold what everybody's vision is.
Yeah.
And to your point, housing's the newest.
Yeah, and
So-
it may be hard for them to subsidize an individual other than, of course, bonus systems and the way they do their compensation, individual for homeownership. But again, if they could figure a way to partner with the city
Yeah.
to help
Yeah.
bend some of those cost curves,
Interesting.
right?
No, I
Because
like
it
that.
really is bending the cost of getting that infrastructure and opening up land. And so that may be an area because it's not, I mean, if you think of like Lennox, let's talk about Lennox and Marshalltown, great company, right? But back in the day, or John Deere, even in Waterloo, when those plants were coming up, they built housing around those plants, right? They're still there today.
Yep.
And I will tell you, around that neighborhood in Lenox, these are some really nice little bungalow kind of homes, right? Very great starter homes. So it's not like there's not a history of that. It's just now coming back to that, I think,
Yeah.
is kind of revisiting of it. How
cycle.
did that cycle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and to your point, the first question, at least in the top 3, is do you have any shovel-ready lots?
Yeah.
And
For you,
and
for your process.
Yeah, and also
Yeah.
defining what a shovel-ready lot is.
Correct.
And that leads back to we need land. How can we get land and infrastructure in place? And is anybody willing to donate potentially or at least reduce price so the city can come in and take care of that and get that up and running? There's a lot of irons in the fire and there's a lot of infrastructure surrounding properties that aren't what I would consider shovel ready
Correct.
yet.
close.
But they're close
Yeah.
and they just need that extra push to really get the land to that point where it is ready for multifamily, townhomes, single family, or whatever have you. So
Well, and on the same vein as employers, I mean, we behoove to leave out trades, right? Skilled trades.
Oh, yeah.
Critical.
Because that's another element. I know that Matt, you're attempting to take you're putting on a new lens and looking at that of phase 1. Maybe intentions were good, but we're also thinking how can we involve local trades even more to continue bolstering that in the areas you build.
It's another large effort that we've decided to take on, and
We've got a huge group of trades retiring.
We do. We have a lot of trades retiring and or have recently retired, and so there's a definite need in a lot of these smaller communities where, and I've said this before, maybe that custom home builder was putting up 2 or 3 homes a year, and that was perfect for their business, and that works. And then when they retire, now that gap is gone. So I really think as we're growing, we call it a VBA, vendor buildable area. Basically, it's a regional trade base. And while we're moving across Iowa and talking to communities, we're also trying to track and log and put into our database any trades that are interested in working with Origin.
Oh, that's great.
So we can have, the goal is to have a map someday that we can pinpoint that community and say, okay, you're within this hour radius of Jefferson, for example. So now I know I have a concrete guy, a framer, and a plumber that's willing to travel and partner with Origin, which is also back to the education and coaching, because they might not be used to that style or speed of what we're used to running. But if we can have that continued partnership as we grow around their radius, rather than constantly bringing trades from Des Moines, which is working, and we're partnering local where we can, when we can. But again, it's getting that word out, making sure people know what we're trying to do. We have really good intentions behind it. They might need to learn a little bit about our process. That's okay. That's part of the partnership. But that's the goal, is as we're building these houses across Iowa, now we're getting to that next layer, that next step of vendor buildable, regional trade base, having this database built in and ready. And I'm a huge advocate for trades, for young kids to get involved. And I would love to be able to encourage that. And what better way to do it than getting involved in the communities. And again, I bring up Manning a lot, but their local high school is building a house right now.
Yeah, right next to them.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel the same way. Well, one of our and where the state's partnering on this is actually the apprenticeship program. So when early on in my tenure with IEDA, I asked to go meet with the trades union hall. I think they were shocked. It's like, what? The Department of Economic Development wants to meet with us? Well, first of all, my history is that I had one grandfather that was a union craftsman tradesman. Another one was an entrepreneur. So I see both sides of it.
My dad was a carpenter.
Yeah. So, but what I said to them is I have the greatest respect for what you do, and we have to build the pipeline, right? Because, and it's not just the trades. I mean, there's a statistic that says 10,000 baby boomers a day exiting our workforce, and that's crossed all sectors. Right. So we have to kind of grow our own. Mm-hmm. And that's when we really changed the state, working with IWD, the apprenticeship program. We have one of the strongest apprenticeship programs in the country. And that was really working with the trades. So we believe that. And then also, these apprenticeships are starting in the high school level. So whether it's through the construction things or we even see it on industry, I think the greatest validation for this or advertisement was the story that the governor often told about Vermeer had an individual from high school that went to school half a day and then worked on the floor driving a brand new pickup. Well, that's the best advertisement you can have about why, there's great career that does not require a 4-year degree. It does require some kind of training and skill sets, right? Yep. So I do see that. And so I think those are ways that the state can partner too, working with the local school districts and IWD to encourage that, because it is something that we need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, changing gears just a little bit, because I want to be mindful of both of your times, because time flies with you too. I knew it would. I knew it would. Yeah, I knew it would. There's never enough time when it comes to rural housing, in my opinion. It just truly, you could go on forever. But between the two of you, what is your vision for Iowa's rural housing market over maybe the next 5-10 years? Crystal ball, if you will. Are there any specific benchmarks or goals that the state is working to hit just to try and ensure more attainable housing?
Yeah. So again, I talked about that 21,000 housing, and 70% of it basically owner occupied. I would like to see us continue to get more capacity for workforce housing tax credits. I think it is by far the best tax credit we have for developers. I would even go so far to say that if we get increased capacity, the majority of that should go to rural Iowa. The other thing that we have done, and one of the things Matt and I just recently started talking about, because you have some homes out there that have not moved, that we work with a lender network of 400 lenders across the state. And we have a down payment assistance that's 5%, no cap, price of the home. Now, it is a zero interest loan that's a separate note that's due upon sell or refinancing. Yeah. But it has been, last year, our portfolio, even where interest rates was 15% higher than the previous year. The other thing I will say is it's 22% minorities, which is extremely important to me, that we continue to try to close that minority gap of home ownership. And then there's an additional $5,000 grant for veterans, because, obviously we have a heart for veterans. And then, you look at even the Home-Based Iowa. It was in Marshalltown, as we were talking about earlier yesterday. Of course, they have the veterans home there, but they're a newer member of Home-Based Iowa. But if you're a Home-Based Iowa, you need to be looking, because a lot of communities are doing things to incentivize it beyond, the down payment assistance that we have. So some of them are doing, like rebates on taxes or whatever. So when you're in communities, Matt, you should ask about Home-Based Iowa and see if there's some additional incentives that that you all can layer in as you begin to market your inventory.
Yeah. I love that idea. Absolutely.
Well, the crystal ball for me, our marketing tactic is that we're in all 99 counties.
Yay, you're wanting to get there.
He may need more than 5 people, though.
Yeah, I think
so.
The team
if the
will
senior
grow
leadership is listening to this,
they are.
Kyle. But really, when we started mapping this out, it was, let's try to break the state in half. Originally, it was, let's break it in half, and then we can kind of take the east side, the west side, and then the next phase will be 4 regions or 4 quadrants, and figuring out how does that break down and how does that work. And then from there, we'll break it down even further. And so as we create our roadmaps for workforce housing and we see our leads coming in for our custom, that's always kind of been my vision, is let's look where the custom homes are being built on the fringe of some of these communities. And then let's look into the community a little deeper. So now maybe we're building 2, 3, 4 customs around that area or in that county. And then by default, almost, you're seeing the same economic growth in some of those smaller communities.
Yes. So it has been interesting to see
it's a little bit of the yin and yang, back and forth, figuring out, okay, custom here, workforce there. And we look at our map, obviously in my office, I look at it daily. Yeah. And so I'm constantly going, okay, I just heard from this community and heard from this person over here that wants to build. What's going on over in Eldora? What's going on in Baxter? What's going on in Marshalltown? And kind of, you're almost breaking it down region by region at that point to try to calculate strategically where to go.
Yeah.
All 99 is a big lift.
You can do it. I believe in you.
But yeah, that's the crystal ball, and
well, it's certainly needed.
And we want to take on as many of those, the 70% of that 21,000 that we can. So
Yay. I like the be aggressive. I like it. I know that there are a lot of, like I said, a lot of cities and groups and towns really being creative and doing what they can and looking at all of these resources, which we'll link to a bunch of these in our show notes as well to make sure that people have, access to Home-Based Iowa, IEDA, IFA, some of these, the lending network program that you talked about as well. So we'll drop those in the show notes. I know Iowa State Housing, the extension office up there is always working on rural readiness assessments and trying to figure out how to break down those community barriers on workforce.
And we provide grants
travel.
on that with Empower Rural Iowa, working in partnership with Iowa State. It's another way we can help communities be development ready.
Yeah, I would say for any community that's listening to this or wanting more information or how would I get started, that's a really good starting
it's such
point.
A good
is that rural
insight
housing readiness
into
assessment.
Where are you really,
and the other
where
one,
can you go?
Yeah, the other one is the Iowa profile. I mean, we have. I think it's one of the best data sets there. We had a webinar the other night. We had over 400 individuals and communities represented, but it really does talk about forecasting. It really delves deep. I think then using that as kind of a baseline, and then certainly again, we have great. I mean, I can't say enough good things about the Extension Office at Iowa State. We work with them on so many different initiatives.
Yeah, and to go along with that too, the comprehensive plans, a lot of these smaller communities, they're dated, and they really need to remember to work on that and work towards that goal of updating it. If it's 20 years old, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Correct.
And that's part of the things that you guys are looking at, that we're looking at. So you really want to get into that. I'd say 3 to 5, 5 to 7 max on that comp plan, and then look to update it again.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah. Well, are there any other exciting upcoming initiatives or announcements that from either one of you two coming up for this year that we can talk about, knowing that we're very early in the year, but I know that there are a lot of moving parts for both of your operations.
We were able to get our phase 2 down in Knoxville. We got those 5 in the ground. So those are all in framing stage at the moment. We've been able to work through the winter, work through the cold. This week might be a different story. But essentially, we were able to break ground on those, and we're gearing up for breaking ground in Jefferson on our 3 infill lots there and our 5 in Conrad. So very exciting times for us as we're expanding our workforce outreach. And then by June, we'll obviously have another round of submittals and have selected 3 or 4 communities for...
You don't know how many yet, do you?
I don't.
No.
And
I can see your wheels turning.
And I can't tell you.
No, okay, all right. We won't force you to tell us today, but...
And I would say for us that we're always in continuous improvement. Every time we do a round of workforce or our tax credit programs on the Fed side, we're always looking at our scoring and how, because we're really concerned about quality and durability, which that's the other thing we love working with Origin. You build great products that communities are going to be proud of, 20 years from now. And that's something that's really concerning to me. And so we'll continue to do that. I think on the, the other side of housing that we deal with housing across the continuum, right? Except when you get to, really, custom homes. But the homeless side and some of those, the tax credit side, things we're working with this new administration in Washington is, just give it to us in a block grant and tell us who we need to serve, because there's nobody that knows how to serve Iowans better than us. right? Our communities and the state, and partnering with our developers. And, it's anything but affordable housing when you layer on all of these federal regulations. And if we could lean that process down, you will really see an unleashing of building that could occur for, again, all people in our population that need housing.
Yep.
I love that.
Affordability means different things to different people.
Boy, it really does.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. Well, you two are winding down our time. Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners out there? Debi, I just appreciate your opinion and your insights. I know there's a lot of moving parts happening on all the fronts of rural Iowa and Iowa in general. And I just thank you for taking the time
this was fun.
Sit down with us. And
I appreciate you and your support. And
Matt'll open for you anytime on stage. He'll always be your hype man.
Because I send so many people his way,
Claire.
and he always takes their phone calls. So I appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're going to round on, we end every episode with an off the rails section, which is just a randomly generated question. I promise it's not a gotcha.
Is it an AI generated question or
Yeah, it is.
Sure is.
I try not to pick and choose too much. So this is what it gave me. So bear with me today. No, I'm kidding. It's not bad. This one's a hard one for me too. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? And that can be from anyone along the way, from when you were a kid all the way up to maybe yesterday. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Wow.
That's a really good one. And I think you gave me a hard one last time I was on here
I did
too,
not.
for the record.
Oh, boo.
Oh man. I carry a little quote book in my truck, so now I'm trying to think of which one I could pull.
It's out in the
from.
parking lot.
Yeah,
We're not going to let you go get
it's
it either.
in the parking lot.
I have one if I need to help you to give you 30 seconds back.
You can go first, Claire.
Yes,
one
please.
of my favorite pieces of advice came from a dear mentor of mine, and it's when you lose, don't lose the lesson. And I like that.
Oh, that's perfect.
And it's a little bit pessimistic, a little bit optimistic, a little bit if you lose, which is a hard thing to do, especially for someone who likes to win. You got to look back and reflect on what did you learn, and make sure you learn something so you know what to do different next time.
I think I'm just going to go with a quote that, and I don't even know who said it, but, I have it on my whiteboard in my office that, a good leader inspires people to have confidence in the leader. A great leader inspires to have people have confidence in themselves.
I love that. I love that a lot.
You guys had two really good ones, so now I'm just going to totally botch this section. So I have a quote that I know off the top of my head. I can't say that it's necessarily advice that was given to me. I probably read it somewhere. But it's always stuck with me. So I think that's the one I'm going to pull
It counts.
up.
It counts.
Yes, counts.
And it's never let yesterday's disappointments overshadow tomorrow's dreams.
Oh, I love that.
So that's always kind of been there.
Wow.
That's
a little bit like be a goldfish from Ted Lasso.
Yeah, and I
bit.
didn't want to do the goldfish quote or like keep grinding.
No, but it's same vein, right?
The coaching side of me, I have so many of those that pop up.
That is awesome.
But that's one that's
perfect.
kind of always
That is
stuck
perfect.
with me of like, we're just going to keep going.
Yeah,
no
that's
matter
so
what
true, isn't
happens.
it?
That matches you.
We'll keep going.
Yeah.
Does it?
It does
Okay,
match you.
good.
It does.
Well, I'm glad
It
I
kind
did
of fits
that
this whole endeavor you're doing with
Yeah.
Virgin Homes, actually. Yes. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you two again so much for taking the time out of
This
your
is great.
very, very
Thank
busy
you.
schedules to join us. And yeah, we just appreciate it. And we look forward to
course.
doing a lot more impactful work across rural Iowa.
Well, it's been great fun, and thank you for what you do.
Yeah, thanks for coming on today, Debbie. Thank you, Claire. Appreciate it, as always.
Thanks for tuning in to Dig It, a real estate podcast, produced by me, Claire Bramer, audio editing and uploads by the ever-talented Amplified Des Moines team, and brought to you by Hubble Realty Company. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share this podcast with anyone who loves real estate just as much as we do by listening and sharing wherever you get your podcasts and watching on YouTube at Dig It. Have questions or topics you'd like us to dig into? Reach out. We'd love to hear from you.